Magic for the ancient Egyptians was a science derived from knowledge and books. And the ancient Egyptian magician was highly educated and possessed wide-ranging knowledge in many literary, religious, physical, and magical fields. It was nothing but a scientific miraculous power that whoever possesses it can perform actions that the ordinary human mind is unable to comprehend its secret. Magic linguistically, magic in the comprehensive lexicon is everything that conceals its cause, imagines it to be untrue, and takes the course of camouflage and deception, exposing falsehood in the form of truth, the use of supernatural powers by spirits, the art and practices of the magician. Beginning with griot, magic began in ancient Egypt from time immemorial, predating their knowledge of writing. If we do not know the name of the first Egyptian magician, we can say that a certain class of priests called the chanting priests or griot of love in the ancient Egyptian language were the ones who specialized in practicing magic. As for the nature of magic, why, it was just an imaginary ritual to influence the viewer and delude him with things that do not exist. Indeed, the ancient magicians reached the knowledge of post-nature science or metaphysics. The ancient Egyptian magicians became famous among all the neighboring peoples for their fame in magic and ingenuity of the Egyptian magicians in the ancient Egyptian civilization more than in all other civilizations. Between huts and royal palaces, the Egyptians practiced magic in the affairs of their lives besides their worship of the gods. Starting from the huts of simple peasants and fishermen and ending with temples and royal palaces. Therefore, archaeological sites in Egypt, especially on the banks of the Nile, contain amulets, spells, drawings, and statues even of witches, and researchers finally found them in the far depths of the villages of Upper Egypt. And all the heavenly books referred to Egyptian magic as a kind of illusion, as the researcher Evan Kong mentions in his book translated into Arabic, Magic and Magicians of the Pharaohs. The ancient Egyptian magicians used it to protect Egypt from its enemies and the flood of the Nile in abundance, and to prevent demons and evil forces that imagined the ancients lurking for them. Therefore, in addition to praying to God to bless him with a bountiful agricultural crop, amulets and incantations were hung around his neck to ward off the evil of demons. And even the doctor in ancient Egypt used to prescribe treatment for the patient, but he gave him a talisman to protect him from the evil forces that controlled the disease. In this regard, Fang mentions in his book that the sage, Marie-Care, says in his teachings, he created magic for the sake of people in order to keep away from them the calamities of eternity, to secure and defend against any apparent or hidden aggression, and for the sake of healing. The secret of hidden powers. Magicians were able to bring in hidden powers that exist around us and in things, whether inanimate or living, and control of post-nature powers was a secret science that magicians did not convey except with conditions, covenants, and no one could be a magician, and we do not know the conditions for selecting magicians. Even if we know that they learned in temples. The doll was used in magic among the ancient Egyptians, meaning that the magician, if he wanted to harm someone with magic, would make a doll for him and prick it with needles or burn it. This is on the king, Ramses III, but their matter was discovered and arrested. There is an exciting story. We find an Egyptian priest discovering his wife's betrayal of him by a young man. So he made a small crocodile out of wax and waited until the young man went down to the pool to wash. Curses and threats. In the tombs of the Saqqara region and the pyramid, there are inscriptions and hieroglyphic writings that include curses and threats on the walls and entrances to the tombs. These curses were written as a desire from the deceased to keep thieves away from these tombs in order to preserve the mummified body that the soul recognizes again in the other world. Magic was an effective means of defense for the cemetery and its treasures. It revealed a tomb for one of the artists called Betty inside the tombs of the workers who built the pyramids. And in the cabin of this tomb built of mud bricks, there are two different magical inscriptions. One for Tati, and the other for his wife. He enters this cemetery to touch it with his will. And whoever does anything against it will be devoured by crocodiles, and devoured by hippos in the waters, and snakes and lions in the land. There is another cemetery in Saqqara at its entrance. An inscription in which its owner says, "Whoever harms my cemetery badly, I will cut off his neck like a goose." One of the most beautiful things that were found was that the entrance to one of the tombs found a person standing with a large stick in his hand, indicating that anyone would be harmed. Cemetery. Khufu and the witches. When the son of King Khufu, the owner of the Great Pyramid, came to the magician, and his name was my grandfather, who lived in the city of Hetzfru and was 100 years old, and Khufu asked him about the truth of what he had heard, that my grandfather could cut off a human head and return it again. And the magician answered yes, and the king asked him to do that, but the magician refused and said, "I do not do that to a human being." And the king said, "I will bring a prisoner." The magician said, "The prisoner is a human being." So he brought him a goose, and its neck flew into the sky amidst the astonishment of those present. Then he put the goose neck back to run in front of those present. The secret of survival magic. The secret of the survival of magic until now lies in the continuation of the belief in magic and the survival of the manifestations of magic. And there are other reasons related to the magician himself and the extent of his possession of cunning and skill in seizing opportunities to do his work of magic. The manifestations of magic in people's lives so far are related to human nature, which is based on the love of penetrating beyond nature. In addition to the heavenly books that were filled with the narration of stories of magic and talked about the tree of immortality, which according to the interpretation of the Torah was to earn the eater of its fruits immortality. And some soothsayers took advantage of those circumstances to encourage people to believe in them. Therefore, most magicians in ancient Egypt were of the theological or priestly type, and their purely magical means were talismans, veils, spells, and the use of strange materials such as goat hair, seahorses, and crocodiles. The disease was seen as the act of an evil spirit that entered the human body. Hence, the magician used to focus his magic on the exit of this evil spirit through his commands to leave, and he did not use the means of hitting the patient's body with a stick until the death of the victim, as the charlatans do today. The evil spirit is removed from the body by pleading with the gods, so he says, "Peace be upon you, O Horus, O you who are in the land of hundreds, O sharp-horned, O great-minded. I intended you to praise your beauty, not to destroy the devil who possesses this body."